got a big visit here to San Antonio. Just what are some of your initial reactions here?
Yeah, it's my first campus visit since taking the job as commissioner. I started just a few weeks ago, and it's been a great visit. You know, Lisa and her entire team put together a pretty comprehensive schedule. I maybe should have thought about making people work on a Friday afternoon, but you know, we're really excited about UTSA and being in the conference. And I think from the market and the environment in this market and the opportunity they have here and the affinity they've created to just the investment that's being made. Like, you just walk through this facility, and you see how serious they are about creating a top-notch student-athlete experience here. And I got time with all of the coaches today as well. It's just been a really terrific visit to hear more about what's happening here and how we at the conference office can help them.
What's something you've learned about UTSA from being here that might have been different from expectations based on reputation?
So what I did learn is it's a young program. I wasn't really, I would tell you, fully versed. Like, it's been a whirlwind the last 6 weeks. I don't think I was fully versed on a lot of the specific detail, like the Wikipedia version of every campus. But it is a young campus, and it is a young athletic program. I think what's been accomplished to date, not only as an institution, but you look around the campus and the cranes and the construction, like, there's real investment going on here in creating a great experience. So I think what they've done so far to accelerate their success in athletics is really encouraging. I think it's a terrific time for them to be part of what we're building in the American.
Have you been able to go around the city, or have you mainly been on campus?
Oh, I've spent more time in San Antonio than I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost count of the number of Final Fours and other meetings I attended in San Antonio. Today, Lisa and I met for lunch, spent most of really the day here on campus, visiting with people and just trying to understand a little bit more as we're getting on wheels as an administration, what we can do. Our job is to be here for all the institutions in the conference. And Lisa was one of the first phone calls I had when I took the job, and it wasn't a "Hey, how you doing?" call. It was like, "Hey, here are some things that we could start working on together," and we're already making some great progress, which has been great.
When you first took the job and did the intro presser, you mentioned some really kind of bold and maybe outside the box ways of doing things. Anything that's been able to get rolling already in your initial week?
Yeah, everything is rolling, and there's I think everybody's impression of those comments is like, well, they're going to go do these things. And the reality of all these ideas, whether it's, are you going to have a private capital partner to invest or become an investor in your conference, across the conference? Are you going to sell a league-wide jersey patch? Are you going to bring a brand in to sort of rename the conference to generate revenue and resources for campuses? We're rolling on all of them. We're having a lot of great conversations on all of those fronts. There's a lot of questions still. I think with some of these things, when they're new to the industry, there's more questions than answers. I've been fortunate to have some experiences outside of collegiate athletics in these areas that enabled me to think about ways they could be done. But the reality is, our role is to break some glass. Like, collegiate athletics has changed. It's not what it was 10 years ago. People have to think differently about the industry in order to try to create more resources so the institutions can deliver on a great experience.
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the conference at this point?
I think there's a lot of challenges generally. Like, I think people would typically say to you, oh, well, there's the House settlement, there's the transfer, all of that stuff you read about are all challenges, but they are not unique to this conference. Like financial challenges, conference realignment, the transfer portal, the House settlement, like, these are challenges to the industry and threats to the industry, quite frankly. For our conference, I think our challenge will be continuing to stay focused on trying to deliver a great product. And we have a history of being able to deliver a great product and competing in the postseason at a high level. Our intent is to maintain that. So when I met with coaches today, we were talking about, like, what's your job, what's my job? The coach's job is to continue to recruit great kids, give them a great experience, and put a great product on the court and on the field. Our job at the conference is to try to get creative and develop new resources to give the institutions a chance to get creative and do more and recruit more effectively and retain student athletes for a longer period of time.
Are there things that can be done at the conference level that can drive NIL opportunities at the individual schools, or does that have to happen more locally?
No, I think it's both. Institutions are already off and running on NIL opportunities, whether through their collectives or brands or otherwise. What we can do at the conference level is just, it's all additive. We can enhance that. When I threw the idea out there about the prospect of a league-wide jersey patch, all sports, all schools, the idea wasn't like, hey, how do we generate more revenue for the conference and redistribute it? To me, like, maybe there's a way to do this with a brand that wants to invest in student athletes, like it becomes a a conference-wide NIL opportunity. Like those are realities where I think we can layer on top of the value that a lot of our institutions are working really, really hard to create, whether it's through their brand deals or it's through their collectives or through fundraising or whatever it is.
I know you've got the TV deal in place, obviously, for the next several years, but with everything changing on the TV side of the equation, especially in college sports, when do you start conversations on that?
Thinking about TV, I worked on the other side of it too, when I was in television on the buy side. And I think everybody's impression is like, well, here's a 10-year contract and we'll see you in 9 years. But the reality is the conversation never ends. Like I've already had many conversations, like we have a great partner in ESPN, we have a terrific media contract, we get a ton of exposure. We are also getting exposure in isolated windows in football. The ESPN Plus strategy has worked incredibly well. Like even here at UTSA, they've made a great investment in their broadcast facilities, and they're going to have a leg up and be able to produce more product and have more UTSA programming in the space. But the conversations with your media partners are never-ending conversations. In addition to, you want to know what else is going on in the marketplace. What I can tell you is, it's never been a better time to be a content owner and a content provider. Like there are more options than there have ever been before, and it's not just about typical linear television anymore. The more competitive the space continues to be, the better it is for everybody that has product to sell, and live sports are proving to be more and more valuable with every cycle.
There has been some conversation in recent weeks in different spurts about the possibility of a G5 playoff. Would you be interested in that kind of thing, or how does the league feel about that?
I think all these conversations, like initially I was reading about that, and I actually think the way it got reported wasn't totally accurate, because the CFP is hugely valuable to the American. And Mike works really, really hard to advocate for, not only the American, but for the group of five, in their position to have access, and that access is there, and it's coveted and it's important, and we're playing a very critical role in that room with other commissioners to shape the future of the CFP. Having said all that, there's 4 group of 5 conference champions that will get left out of the CFP based on how it's structured, unless one of them is able to earn an at-large spot. So in a scenario where 4 G5 champions are then outside of the CFP, why not have a conversation about, within your current bowl structure and your bowl partnerships, having a 3-game playoff for something meaningful? I'm not saying the bowl games are not meaningful, but that's a new property and a new asset. It could reinvigorate some bowl games. But initially it was just like, well, there's a CFP and there's it. One does not replace the other. Like this conference worked hard to be in the CFP structure, and we'll work hard in the future to stay there and expand our access. But beyond that, there's opportunities, like there's room for more. And I think that's what makes that conversation and a lot of others interesting to have.
On a related note, what is the level of concern about perhaps the growing divide between the SEC and the Big Ten and everybody else?
I think everybody has their opinions on that. What I would say is there's definitely a resource divide. I don't think anybody in the G5 group was happy with how the financials played out in the future of the CFP. Having said that, we all came, it was before my time, but we all came to terms with it and agreed it was the best path forward for college football, and made the decision to get on board, and everybody's moving forward. In a lot of ways, it's the same with the House settlement. Of course it's a challenge financially and otherwise, but if this enables us to have a decade to figure out structurally how collegiate athletics is going to move forward, then we should move forward. So the other side of it too is all these conferences, the SEC, the Big Ten, us, the Big 12, the ACC, Mountain West, Sun Belt, Conference USA, the MAC, everybody has created value and added it to this enterprise. So we're all in there sharing in value that everybody had a part in creating. Are some, feeling like they created more value than others? I think that's probably the case. But so long as we can disagree on things, but so long as the decisions to move the enterprise forward are being done as a group, because moving forward as one thing is accretive. It just creates more value for everybody.
On the UTSA, for example, on the football side, has done really well, attendance-wise included. There are several schools, as you know, in this conference that have struggled at the gate. Are there ways or things that you can work on to address that?
We're in the midst of just trying to understand, this is like the beginning of my tour, trying to understand what we can do as a conference, because the conference office has a lot of information, but we also have a lot of relationships to understand institutions and other conferences and how they've battled with that and how they've been able to overcome it. So where the low-hanging fruit is and how we can reinvigorate certain sports programs on campuses, we're going to get into that. And look, the reality too is, in this climate where things are harder to access and more expensive, everybody is making harder decisions about what they're going to invest their money in. So the beauty of what UTSA has here is like they have a really vibrant market, and they have the ability to create ownership with their fans. Like there's a lot of people, when I worked at Rutgers years ago, we had a massive fan base that just lived in New Jersey. They didn't go to the school, but because it was that school in New Jersey, they claimed it as their own. And I think we have a real opportunity in San Antonio for people to claim UTSA as their school, whether they came here or not.
What's your initial impression of UTSA's football program? There's been success in recent years, and they're probably going to be one of the trendy picks this season at the top of the league.
Well, after spending some time with Coach Traylor today, it doesn't surprise me at all why they're having the success that they're having. He is, he's clearly a very focused guy who understands the football climate in the state of Texas. He also is big on relationships. Like I could see just how he's interacting with me and how he's interacting with his staff, and what Lisa told me how he interacts with kids. And I met a couple of the players today. Like he's clearly invested in relationships more than anything. And I think that makes kids want to play for you. I don't think it's any secret why they're having success. I think he has a lot to do with it. The reality of a coaching staff is you have lots of coaches, but you need to have a leader that people are really going to want to be around. And he's definitely built something special in a short period of time here. And I think they have a tremendous amount of upside. Like I left that meeting really excited about trying to figure out ways that we as a conference, can help him and the other coaches. The reality of the football in this conference is there's a lot of really talented coaches in this conference. And we want those coaches to succeed, and we want to keep them in the conference as best we can.
Can you quantify definitively the impact of the House settlement, and where will the league feel that the most in the years to come?
Yeah, so a lot of that is still being negotiated as it relates to where it's going to come down. I don't think we have a really strong handle on the specifics of the numbers, although we have a general range. I mean, I can't share more than that with you because it's confidential based on the settlement being ongoing. But I think everybody in every conference is facing the same thing, which is once a settlement is done, whenever that is, you'll be facing a 10-year schedule of payments on these sort of back damages. I think everybody in every conference has worked hard to try to figure out a way to get the conversation to the best possible place. And our conference gets it. It's like, look, it is what it is. We're moving forward. Let's try to understand, what we're going to be impacted by, and let's figure out ways to be able to manage it. And even in the conference office, we're trying to figure out ways based on revenues inbound and what we can do to try to soften the blow on the campuses. I think that will start to play itself out over the next couple of months.
Does the league talk with the individual schools about how best to handle the prospect of revenue sharing with players? Is it important that there's maybe some consistency there across the board, or what role do you play in that?
I don't know. We're starting to have those conversations. Consistency, I think, within a conference like ours, like, how collegiate athletics is right now, like everybody's out there eating each other, right? And I think the thing we want to avoid is we want to avoid eating our own inside the conference. So should we be having a conversation about a league-wide policy or position on like what revenue sharing should look like? Like there's this cap everybody's talking about. If we're going to participate, should we have a cap within the conference? All these things are out there being discussed. It's a little early yet to call. I think everybody's sort of absorbing what the impacts could be and how they're going to manage it. But I think all those things, including a couple of our ADs have come to me and said that, like, we're willing to talk about anything, even if it's conference wide, to try to level the playing field within, the environment that we're in every single day.
You mentioned the possibility of private equity. What are the pros and cons of getting involved with that with the league?
Well, I think it depends on how you approach it. The narrative that private capital has not played in college sports is just not true. Like you just have to go up the road to the Moody Center, like that's a private capital deal, right? It was financed by private capital. Texas was basically given the building at no cost, and that private capital group owns revenues outside of Texas events in that building for a couple of decades, I think it is. So they've already been in the space. That's the simplest example, like financing a facility and the return on that because there's recurring revenues. I think what's interesting to private capital, at least from the people that I've met, is they see a high affinity business that is growing in value and that is sort of like a blue chip. It's tried and true. Like, yeah, conferences are changing, realignment, this and that, but the value of the media rights going up and up and up. So they see the value increasing. They see a high affinity business as an appreciating asset. So I think the upside for the conferences and the institutions is you get an immediate infusion of capital that you can deploy to de-stress coaches and NIL, but more into collectives, facilities, like the things you want to accelerate that maybe you schedule over years to depending on how your revenue is inbound. And then the other side of it is you get operational expertise. Like this whole thing about private equity comes in, they run your business, to tell you what to do. That's not true if you pick the right partner. But when we were at IMG Academy and we sold it to private capital last year, we got more operational expertise and support and guidance on and advising on the business side of it. Like the money, of course, was very important, but that stuff was equally as valuable. And I think having outside people look at our industry and figure out how to recommend other ways we may be able to cut it would be just as important as anything else.
Does it matter if you try to hold on to the brand through that process? Meaning the AAC brand, does it matter that name stays there?
Versus changing it to like a brand?
Yeah.
I don't think so. You know, I think it's more about what is the asset. Like what you call it is one thing, what it actually is another thing. But what changes too is like conference realignment obviously is the plane that never stops circling the airport, right? So in order to invest in something, you want to invest in something that you know is going to be that something at the worst 10 years from now. And if it's not, then it's going to be something that's different or better or it's bigger or more valuable or whatever it is. But I don't think name really will play into it.
Awesome.
Guys good?
Thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.